This is the College GameDay Podcast for Thursday, July 25th. Rece Davis with you. Pete Thamel is busy chasing stories on these various media days. One of the things that popped out from the ACC media days was an article in the 24/7 sports site about the ACC and its need for greater representation in the media, to have a better voice, to be able to further enhance their profile. The hook to the story, obviously, blaming Florida State's omission from the college football playoff last year on the fact that there were not enough voices in the national media, particularly on ESPN, representing the ACC. Now, I took exception to this line of thinking, not to the story itself, nor do I take exception to those who think that Florida State should have been in the playoff. That's a reasonable position to take. But our job at ESPN is to cover college football in its entirety. I understand you can't divorce yourself from your connections. That would be nonsense to assume that everyone involved in covering the playoffs somehow becomes a robot and has no connections in earlier times of their life. For instance, 2017, Kirk Herbstreit doubted the committee would do the right thing in his judgment and make the best decision and include Alabama over Ohio State, his alma mater. He got up and walked around out of admiration and disbelief. This decision, which Kirk agreed with, came at the expense of his alma mater. Well, you say, well, that's Alabama. Of course, they get the benefit of the doubt. I'd suggest in the playoff era, no one has been given the benefit of the doubt more than Ohio State, although Alabama certainly would be right there with them. But have they not earned that? And yet, when you talk about this bias in the media and advocating for one team over another, and you say Alabama always gets the benefit of the doubt, no one mentions 2022. When our new colleague Nick Saban thought his team should have been in the playoff over TCU or Ohio State. And I don't recall anyone on my set, including me, agreeing with that position. Alabama didn't have a case in 2022. Florida State certainly had one in 2023. There's no question about that. And Mike Norvell makes a compelling argument and a point when he says that Georgia had a case in 2023 if you said the best teams get into the playoff solely on evaluation of talent. There's no doubt about that. The Dogs were one of the best teams talent-wise, but they lost their most important game on the field, which was the win that put Alabama in the playoff. So the natural response becomes, well, what game did Florida State lose? The answer, of course, is none of them. But that begs the question, what is the ultimate criteria? Is that what it's supposed to be? Did you lose or did you not lose? Well, for the entire run of the college football playoff, almost everybody on my desk, especially me, advocated a blend of resume, which certainly includes being undefeated. That's not nothing. But it's not the only criteria. So why do I go and rehash all of this? It's because the point of the article and some of the coaches in the ACC believe that to enhance their product, to enhance their status, to give greater stability to the conference, which is teetering because of the various lawsuits coming from Florida State and Clemson about whether they might want to exit the conference, that the path to that is better PR, a Feinbaum of the ACC, as it were. I don't think that's the path at all for a number of reasons. One, because Paul Feinbaum wasn't just ordained and dropped out of the clouds to become this cultural juggernaut in college football all of a sudden. He wasn't just handed that. He built that with sweat equity and great writing. First, as I remember, as a writer for the Birmingham Post-Herald in the 1980s. And he developed this over time, and he used his particular skills to be able to tap into what fans were thinking at a level very few are able to do or ever have been able to do. Has it benefited the SEC? You bet it has. Would it benefit the ACC if they had someone like Paul, which is a real easy thing to say and an almost impossible thing to do? Of course it would. But that's not what the ACC needs. What the ACC needs is more elite teams. Florida State was an elite team last year. You can argue the merits all day long that whether they should have been in the playoff. In my judgment, the one thing that kept Florida State out was not the lack of a Feinbaum. It was not the lack of representation on the desk on Selection Day, which is absurd, by the way, because if you just have to have someone who represents a particular position or particular school, don't you undermine the credibility of the entire enterprise? And that's not what we're about. So the whole thing that the ACC needs is more elite teams. And if what they can do during that enhances their profile through someone in the media who grows and evolves and becomes a cultural phenomenon, that's fantastic. But it has to be authentic. It has to be genuine. It has to be part of that person's personality. You can't just say, hey, we'd like our Feinbaum too. And Bill O'Brien pointed this out, that there might not be another one just like him. And for all of this, the best news is, whether you agree with the expansion to 12 or don't agree with it, we won't have to have this argument anymore, except as it pertains to whether the ACC should get 2 bids or 3 bids or 1 bid or how many ever bids they wind up with. So a new day is here. And I'm sure that won't soothe any of the Florida State fans' feelings, but we look forward to seeing the Noles in Dublin because it's a new day.